Welcome to our Sessions Live event, How to Become an Illustrator. In this event, we welcome two guests. We've got Eric Torres, who's a veteran illustrator with a storied career, who is currently focusing on a number of very interesting game design projects. We're going to be interviewing Eric about his career, looking at his current work, and then turning the clock back a little bit and asking how he got where he is today. To help us with that, we've got Department Head of Illustration here, Jordan Schrantz, who will be familiar to many students. Hello, Jordan. And Jordan's going to help us really relate all of what Eric's going to talk about to the experiences and the challenges of being a developing artist and illustrator as our students are. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thanks.
It's great. Thank you so much for taking the time. You are an illustrator who has worked in many different capacities. You've worked for design organizations, you've worked for universities and art centers, you work for the museums, and you work for the Phoenix Suns. How big is that? That has got to be the biggest thing in the Phoenix area, I would imagine. And currently, you're also able to combine your commercial career and your kind of professional interests with something that's very personal to you, which is the development of game design projects, which is one of the things we're going to be looking at. So we're going to start this event by asking Eric to share some work. He's got a slideshow prepared for everyone where we can look at some of the projects he's been doing recently, and we'll get a brief tour of what Eric is up to now. So Eric, feel free to share your screen whenever you're ready.
All right. Thanks so much, Gordon. I appreciate it. This project that I'll start by sharing first is one that is the longest running for me. I've been working on World of Rynaga for 25 years this year. So it's been a long time. Through this project, I've been using a set of shapes to build a fictional world full of prose and small stories, maps, lots of iconography, lots of fictional background for characters, because I did start to create a game called Iconica, and I finished that game in 2007, and it went on to have some nice success as an indie game, card game. It was a tabletop game. It ran for about, till 2018, I think, was the last release, and now it's out of print. But you'll hear me probably repeat this a couple times, is that I make everything in small batches. So I believe in the end, there were about 300 to 350 sets of this sold, which I know is a micro sort of effort, but my whole approach is to share it as little items for my shop and such. So you'll see that as I continue. So yeah, this is World of Rynaga. These characters all exist in that world, and they came to life in this strategy card game.
Can we ask you a couple questions at this point?
Absolutely.
Were you involved in the gaming industry actively as a passion yourself before you got into this project?
No, I taught myself everything that I know so far about game design and game theory and game loops and mechanics and all those things. I just read a lot of things online, downloaded free papers, and got involved with some game organizations online that were really great in terms of sharing their knowledge. The game design community is very friendly and very welcoming. There were also a lot of podcasts like Ludology and others that were just instrumental in sharing so much knowledge. Jamie Stegmeyer of Stonemeyer Games is another who has shared so many resources online and continues to.
Fantastic.
The next project I created in 2020, I don't want to trigger anyone's emotions, but that was a time where a lot of resources were needed for people of the downloadable nature. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make some drawing prompts, really simple. I've always been inspired and participated in Inktober, which was Jake Parker's project early on. And I thought, you know what, I'll make my own drawing prompts, and then I'll create these PDFs and offer them on my website as free downloads. And I went around telling people they could download them. And so they were just these PDFs that I ended up creating and sharing with a lot of people. And then eventually skipping, it was about 2023. And someone was like, after I created like 4 different PDFs of these, about 72 drawing prompts, they were like, "Hey, why don't you make a card game and like kind of compile everything that you've done into one experience?" So I went ahead and did that in 2024. That's when I produced Flip Doodle Deluxe, which took all of the words that I had put in those 4 PDFs and I added a bunch of other words. So in the end, there's 528 words that are in this deck of cards. And the way they work is you draw 1 card or 2, and then you turn the cards around and choose 2 words to mash up into some sort of drawing prompt, such as like pumpkin and raccoon or something. And people started using these for not only drawing, but like making little sculpey clay sculptures or earrings or paper origami stuff. And it started to be this thing that really transcended just doodling. So while it's called Flip Doodle Deluxe, I think it's really resonated as an analog card deck that you can just carry and use anywhere you go or share with as many people as you want.
It's an alternative party game to charades for those who like to draw. This is amazing, and the fact that people took it into sculpture is really great. That I'd be curious to see what it looked like.
Yeah, my friend, I wish she would share more of her work. Some folks are a little shy about sharing their work, Jordan, and I think that's okay. Some things are just for them, and I say this all the time. If you want to make something for yourself or to share or just for grandma, that's being true to yourself. And so even though people have different varying degrees of what they want to share, I think this offers them at least some new ways to do it that are offline as well and away from the comparisons of, social media and such.
Yeah, I think it's lovely you create a sort of a creative Kickstarter game. The number of permutations is, if it's 500 times 2 times 2, it's a lot of possibilities.
Well, yeah, and that's the goal, is to create things people can use. And all of my projects tend to be ones that bring people together for a shared experience. So that kind of leads me to Escape Station, Vector Interplay. This was my first Kickstarter project. I'm starting to use Kickstarter and crowdfunding as a way of helping my little business to keep going. Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms were created for indie makers like myself. Vector Interplay was a chance for me to take artwork from all of the different projects I have worked on over the years and create my own little multiverse. It's all these little images and illustrations, some that kind of died on the vine and never went anywhere, some that I did for Inktober. Some things I did as just doodles in my sketchbook. I cleaned them up and put them in this. And it comes with a little zine that I made that has the rules, of course, of how to play this game, but also has a chance for me to share some prose, some encouragement for other artists, and again, express myself through a medium that is really comforting to me, which is print. So yeah, that's Vector Interplay. And again, able to build a lot of community with just playing the game around town.
I like the fact you pull out images from your sketchbook. I always tell students that it's important to keep a sketchbook just to run through like every idea, just jump it in there, because you never know what might
Mhm.
not, be something you're using right now is definitely something that can come up late years and years and years. I mean, I've surprised myself, like pulling out things from the past here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Your sketchbook isn't just for the moment, it's for future you. And I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but like the future versions of ourselves are going to thank yourself for making those little drawings and keeping them, stashing them away if you can, because they can come in really handy with personal projects or even client work. Okay, so the next project that I'll talk a little bit about is called Bug Chums Mini Mart Merchant. And Bug Chums is a project that started as really iconography. It was all these little sort of bug drawings that I did. I'm really into iconography. I've done a lot of it over the years for my employers. And I was tired of like the little vector icons I had gotten really good at doing that are just very technical and straight. So I wanted to do something different and turn my attention to digital art that's iconic, but it's hand drawn. So I work in fresco. I tend to do all of my work in fresco right now because it's vector based. And then I do use Adobe Illustrator to clean those up sometimes. But this is a game that is one sheet of paper and you download it and then print it out at home and the instructions come with it. If any of you know of games like, classic games like Yahtzee, then you kind of can guess what this is about. You're rolling dice, and then you're using the numbers you roll to fill in little bubbles and score little things, and basically run a small mini mart that sells just hatched bugs, trinkets, and goodies in a vending machine that you see on the left. So there's a whole little process, a game loop to it. And at the end of 8 rounds, you score how much zinni or money you earned. So it can be played solitaire or with a bunch of friends. So I've really started to sort of challenge myself to do some things that are downloadable, that are sort of easy to get into, but have like this kind of sweeping possibilities in terms of how many people can get involved. So that's Bug Chum's Mini Mart Merchant. And this Bug Chum project turned into a bigger effort because I am now in the process, my current effort is to release Bug Ruckus. And Bug Ruckus is another game set in that same world. So for you guys out there, all of you who are making your own little worlds, thinking up of your own little settings for stories or artwork that you're going to do, you can find that you can kind of put a big umbrella over lots of projects. It doesn't just have to be one thing if you don't want it to. You can branch into new things. So Bug Ruckus is going to be a card game for 2 players, and it's inspired by classic games like Peanuts and Nerds and Rummy. So if you got a picture in your head of what those games are like, you'll kind of know a little bit of what's coming with this. But I created this book as really a reference for myself. It's got a bunch of table of contents stuff in it. I put in a bunch of references. It's more of a game where both players have both of their decks, and then they face off in this game of delivering cards to certain piles. So I couldn't really share everything I wanted in the short time we have together, but I wanted to give you kind of a scope of all the different types of media this Bug Chums project has hit. One of the friends that supported Iconica when he was about 8 years old came to my booth at Phoenix Comic-Con. He supported that first game I made, and then came to me years later and said, I want to make music inspired by something you're doing. And I said, well, why don't we do some music for this? First, I was blown away that a kid came back and was even interested in working with me or collaborating, but it was awesome. And this album he came out with is just super cool. You can find it on YouTube right now, or Spotify or Apple Music. It's such a cool example of, you never know who the people you're interacting with will become, and ways you can have fun collaborating together in the future.
The thread that's coming through these projects is the idea of getting out there, getting your art out there into the world, sharing with people, having an end user in mind who's going to interact with your art. I mean, this is more fun than the average collection of work.
Especially a lot of it that you're self-publishing and then putting on these small runs like that. I mean, from some of my past experiences, it's just a great way to really be a part of the community, because you're really hitting this target market of people who are really, really into it. Usually a lot of other artists or other gamers. So yeah, it's great to see work keep putting back into that circle.
Oh, thanks so much for noticing that. It is not my first comfort zone to put myself and my stuff like so out there, but practice is helping me to get better about it and to do it with a better sense of, like, a better effort in terms of quality. So in January next year, I'll be releasing Bug Ruckus on Kickstarter, and it's going to be my second effort, and we'll see how it goes. The first one went really good. It was moderate success, and that's what I'm hoping for right now, is just keeps having small wins, producing these small batches. I like to say I want to stay married, so I don't want to turn my house into a warehouse. But that's why I do everything in small batches and produce either locally or in the US. So before I wrap up these slides, I had a quick slide to share. Marianne Duchars is a illustrator, but she has this great quote: there is a place for realism in our work, but especially in the day and age we live in, it's important to throw out fear in what we're doing and really try to use all of our imagination and get rid of inhibitions. So one way I'm doing that is I'm doing these blob drawings lately where I throw down a bunch of random scribbles of like color on a artboard or something, in fresco or on paper, and then I try to make things out of those blobs and draw over them. in some way. And it leads to some really crazy stuff. So I think that's one way I'm learning to like push aside the realism and challenge myself with more unrealism. So just to show this quick slide, lastly, in case anyone wants to reach out later with questions, if you're watching now or later on the recording side, if you have any questions, I'm usually around and respond within a couple days.
Eric, thank you so much. It's inspiring to see you creating such a ruckus with your artwork.
Thank you. Thanks. I
And,
appreciate the pun too.
We're going to turn the clock a little bit back and talk about how your career developed. When you were thinking at your early years, high school, and as a kid, is there a point where you thought, I'm going to be an artist or I'm going to be an illustrator? And like, why did that happen?
There wasn't really a point where that happened that I can remember. All I do remember is that I was held back in 4th grade for bad math grades. All my friends moved on. And I remember feeling pretty lonely and bummed about that for a while. When all my friends moved on to high school, I was still in 8th grade. So it left me with this feeling of like wanting to escape from those feelings. And part of what I did back then for fun was draw. So a lot of what I like to say now is that I just kind of decided to stay an artist.
Yeah.
I don't really remember deciding to become one. Obviously, when the time came for me to go to college and figure out what I was going to make my living, I was encouraged by my wife to go to school and get a design degree. And I did that. I did pursue a 2-year degree at that point. But yeah, initially, it was just dealing with the adversity of being a kid, really, that kind of made it to where creativity was always there for me.
So the stories and the characters and you were relentlessly drawing at that time? You were always drawing?
Yeah, it really started in like 4th, 5th grade. I remember drawing we had a Tolleson. I grew up in Tolleson, Arizona, which is a small little city, but they call it a Pride Week, where it was like Tolleson Pride for the little city. And we'd do a parade and all this. I remember doing like little flyers for the parade. That was my first commission. I should have put that in here. I mean, I'll share it with you guys later, but it was really cool to go back and look at that because it's like the only surviving relic of something I drew from way back then.
So we are, of course, Sessions College is a college, so we value education. So there was a point where with all your creativity, you said, wait, I need to get in a program. I need some instruction. Can you tell us about that period where you went through training?
Yes, I had a lot of jobs before I went to school. I had a lot of jobs up to then. I was doing delivery for a sign supply company. I was driving a little truck. I did house cleaning. I did framing for a construction company. I had all sorts of little jobs, and I had this art background that was dear to me personally. And my wife really encouraged me to go pursue a degree. So we put me through 2 years of schooling. And yeah, it changed. I think it changed everything because when I was done, even with my 2-year degree, I went right into the industry in 2000, and I was never without a job. I just kept going, and I think it was just the kind of the relentless nature of my passion projects. People saw that I was trying to take the initiative, at least in my own stuff, and that really said something to them. So
what was the benefit of the education? Like, what did you learn from your program that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't gone?
Yeah, I had some really great instructors, and I think the benefit is being able to be challenged and pushed a little bit. No one achieves anything by doing the bare minimum. And I think it was mainly those things helping me to be comfortable being challenged and look at what I could accomplish. People were helping me to see that I could do more than the bare minimum. And that was really, I think, the biggest thing I'd take away from it was, wow, I could do this, It was good for gaining some confidence over time, for sure.
At what point did you see that your work was kind of going straight more into the illustration? At what point do you feel like that kind of transfer kind of happened? Was it like after school, immediately before school, later, or still happening? It's always like, lifestyle or place.
Yeah, I think when I graduated, I was the first to go to college in my family. I'm the oldest of 7 children. And, the sense of accomplishment I had for myself was pretty great because I come from really humble background, and I wanted to I wanted to prove to myself that I could now take my degree and carry it forward. And once you realize like, okay, I'm going to get this design job. And my first design job, you guys, I was doing these banners and I was cutting vinyl letters out. And these banners said, $5 shots every Wednesday night. These were banners for local
Where's that?
bars
Holy,
and
just
restaurants,
kidding.
establishments. Yeah. I was doing this sort of mundane work that I viewed
Yeah.
at that time as very mundane, but it
Yeah.
was teaching me hand skills. And it was
Mm-hmm.
teaching me the value of delivering something repeatedly at a high quality. It was that the process of learning to do something at to standards. And, whether you
Yeah.
watch Gordon Ramsay or you watch anyone else who's achieved something great in their lives,
Yeah.
you can usually trace it back to these very seemingly boring tasks in the beginning, but they kind of stack up and lead to the next thing. So taking my degree and running it with it was just sort of what I had to do to pay the bills, but it's been my personal projects that supplemented that and kept me inspired.
This is great. So that we're getting into the stage of getting out of college and then thinking about your career. And it sounds like there's two questions that you always want to ask. One is like, how did you get into the industry? And then the second one, which usually comes later, is how did I get my big break? So focusing on the first, can you talk about that period? Like, what was that like? As you say, you were cutting out signs and doing all sorts of production. What was the value of that to you in the long term?
So a lot of my work, you guys, has been for in-house teams. And I remember hearing from an agency leader at one point, don't work in-house. You're going to ruin your career. Don't do it. Don't, work for agencies, work for, anyone but in-house. And my experience has been that's not really what happened. In-house work, I learned to speak to people in suits and ties. I learned how to travel somewhere and collaborate with people in other states. I learned the value of like hanging in there with a team and like together achieving something. And I learned what it was to not worry so much about what I wanted, but what the team was going to want. So in terms of like all of the more early work that I did for financial institutions, I worked for a little bit of time for a agency that did some corporate learning materials. And then most recently, I ended a tenure with W.L. Gore and Associates after 12 years as a design director. And in all those experiences, I learned something about business. There was always something about leadership and what it really was. I saw a lot of things that aren't good to be doing. I learned from those examples, and it was just a paid education. So I think wherever you're at right now in your career, those watching this, I know that some of these roles are very, very soul killing. I know because I've been there. And I know that some people are very challenging to work with, but if you could try to view it as a paid education and write down even what you're taking away from these jobs, they're going to help you, especially if you're passionate about design and illustration. They're going to help you in something later on.
Yeah, your soul was not killed by the experience. You were able to take things away from it as you were doing your design, working for in-house design firms, and then starting to go up in the industry. What was your portfolio like? What was your approach to putting together your portfolio?
So my portfolio approach was to fill it mainly with projects that I initiated. And in the beginning of my portfolio, but back then we had books, you guys. So like some of you may not have that now, but like we had actual portfolio books we carried around. The first few pages were projects like World of Rynaga, and the last few pages were stuff I was working on like more now that I could speak to, was like up to date what I'm doing now for myself. And then in the middle, I had a brochure. I had the web banner series I did. I had some campaign work from a financial institution or what have you. But it was really important to me for people to see that who they were talking to was someone who had initiative to do their own things, whether I had the work or I didn't. And that's what I try to do now, even as I run my studio full time. The past 2 years is if I don't have a client project, I'm working on my own stuff. That gives me a sense of like, okay, I'm still moving, I'm still growing, and I'm still active in using my creative energy.
I also just want to point something out just for students listening, that just if you want to be doing this, you need to be doing it. I mean, you just talk about this example of like you before school, you after school, and even now, like you're just always working, and people see that you're working, so they'll encourage you. But then, just always working, even when you're
Mm-hmm.
working in house, you get those challenges of jobs. You have to learn how to just always be working, and when you have time off, there that doesn't actually exist. You just have to be a machine to a certain degree to commit to it.
Yeah, and if you enjoy it, you guys, like, it doesn't feel like work. It's actually, like, entertaining. Like, I'm sorry, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of season 5s out there that I could do without. I'd rather make my own stuff than spend time on that. But I do
Mm-hmm.
take breaks. I mean, I'm a big video gamer. I love digital games, PC games. When I take breaks, it's to really give my brain send it on a vacation, and I get into
Mm-hmm.
someone else's world, and I enjoy what they've done, and I see the beauty and kind of the poetry in other people's work. But coming back to my own stuff is always a sense of comfort. So the people watching this who are going to do the best and excel are the folks who
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy their creation process and the kind of the whole act of expressing themselves. Those are the folks who are going to excel because for them it's not just work; it's entertainment,
Yeah.
it's fulfillment.
Yeah. It sounds like you've developed good habits early on in terms of being able to do client work and do personal work and get the right balance of that, so that any time you've got something on your plate, and either one of those is going to advance your career.
Yeah, my last job that I had with W.L. Gore and Associates, it was my work on World of Rynaga that really stopped them in their tracks and was like, okay, we're going to give this person an opportunity. I went through 3 interviews. At one point, there were 9 people in my third interview, and it took
Mm-hmm.
me 3 months to land that role. So it was an exhaustive process, and you doubt yourself a little sometimes. There's ups and
Mm-hmm.
downs, and that's normal. But again, I just can't for myself, I can't repeat it too much. Is that I'm glad that I spent the time to be making my own things, even when I thought like, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, because it did help me compete.
One thing I see in your presentation is that, I think being in a design firm for many years, it seems to have given you the skill to also, create your artwork and your concepts, but also really package them and present them in a really effective way. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because illustrators often are focused on the thing that's, inside the frame, the story, the scene, and they're not thinking about, well, how do I present this, and how can I fit it into a product or a venue or something so that other people can consume it. So do you think did working in a design firm help you?
Yes, absolutely. Because on any given day, I'm kind of jaded about advertising and marketing, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. I feel like we all have a lot of ad blindness. We all are kind of like, okay, meh,
Mm,
on all these
yeah.
campaigns that here and there we see. They're a flash in the pan and then they're gone. They're ephemeral. There's nothing
Hmm.
about them that lasts. We don't even remember the last Nike commercial because there's a new,
Yeah.
umpteen other commercials that we're exposed to. So to answer your question, what I learned through design is I learned to think like a little bit more like a marketer.
Hmm.
And that was helpful for me because while I don't consider myself a marketer, I have to be better about sharing the story of these projects that I'm working on because they come
Hmm.
from fictional places. So part of what these roles taught me was how to tell my story from a project standpoint, and then how to share a story in general. What's the plot? What's the trajectory of this story? Who are the characters, and are they like us or are they alien to us?
Hmm.
It really did help me to understand that there are a lot of people out there and they all have different viewpoints about what they're engaging with. So for one example is World of Rynaga. I really wanted to create something that had a multicultural appeal in the art style. So
Hmm.
that that took time, and it took asking people what they thought and getting feedback. So that all comes full circle to the work you do
Hmm.
in house or for a design role. You're constantly getting feedback, and you got to learn to embrace it and work with it and learn from it.
You're talking about telling stories with your work. What kind of content do you think is important when you're describing it? Like just in general terms, like what kind of information go along with the work, to kind of create that context?
Okay, so especially if you're making things that are of a fictional nature, I think it really helps to show people how much you care and how much life you're trying to build into things. And sometimes that means writing a little more than what you might be more comfortable with. And there
Hmm.
are times, you guys, in full transparency, I don't know if everyone's reading everything I'm putting on my site. Probably
Right.
not, but most likely not. But it's there for that one or two people that to
Hmm.
them, it's everything. They want to know. And that's why we're doing it. So telling what the subject is, explaining what it is. People need to know up front what they're engaging with. And that could be tough to whittle down to a title or a heading, but being as brief as possible with that.
Right.
Telling what inspires it. So where does it come from? What kind of mood are you after? What kind of things that are like it that you enjoy? For instance, I love a bunch of Nintendo games. So those are the vibes I'm after. You know, my site, I want it to have much more of a Nintendo vibe than a XYZ vibe. So I'm after really relating that comfort, a sense of color and lightness and brightness in a sometimes very dark world that we live in. So everything I put on there, I want it to be colorful, and I'm going to keep doing that. So telling your story visually and then getting behind that and really sticking to it. One more thing I'd mention, how can people learn more? A lot of times you don't want to explain every single thing because maybe it's in the product you've made and you don't want to really just like dump on your website. But if you can show through video and stuff how things work, this is one thing I'm working on a lot right now, is to get better with video and animation
Yeah.
and some of these things that I need to get better with.
That leads to a question that I think Jordan raised, but I'm going to steal it, which is that what social media channels or tools or approaches have you used to get your work out there, to get clients, to kind of expand your network?
So I'm trying to just use Instagram and LinkedIn right now better than I have used
Mm.
them. I'm very distracted with social media. I'll get on there to accomplish something, and
Yeah.
it's an hour later, and I've been watching clips of comedians or something on there.
Yeah.
So it's very distracting for me. I'm not really a model of how to use it effectively, but I am trying to get better at showing what needs to be shown to tell my story,
Mhm.
and B, making sure that I'm available for questions and my customers and supporters. Because sometimes they'll DM me with questions, and I really pride myself on trying to respond like right away
Right.
and
Very good.
within reason. You know, like answering the questions. And that's one of the benefits of being a small business owner and having a
Hmm.
small shop, is that I can be what Target is never going to be. I can be
Hmm.
available within reason to answer them and be a person they know, a guy they know. So yeah.
Hmm.
Could you give an example of the kind of content that you do put like on your Instagram, like general
Yeah.
categories of what kind of photos or stories you make?
So I'll do images of product once it's done. I sometimes share process videos through like a little stream where I'll go live and I'll be showing what I'm doing so people can get a sense of what I'm doing. I've also done some pre-recorded video where then I'll post that up. I can't fall in a black hole of trying to be a video editor 24/7 now with all these efforts. If it's not easy,
Yeah.
I'm not going to probably get it done. So I need to
Hmm.
be doing more things where like it's over the shoulder video or screen captures or time lapses. I've done those of my blob drawing and stuff. And small windows into how I think and how I put things down on, you know, an artboard or on paper. And then small 5-minute videos where I talk maybe about a subject that's near and dear to me or something I'm working on, you know, right now to get better at. I'm going to
Yeah.
be doing a lot more of that as the days progress here. Does that help, Jordan?
Yeah, but I also agree it's hard to get that balance. Like you want to use the social media, but you don't want to suddenly, get sucked into it. So like, how do you participate, just,
Hmm.
in a measured amount?
And a lot of in-person stuff is what I'm doing more of. So my social media, one of the things I use is actual Zoom calls or
Hmm.
in-person coffees. Those things, they weigh much more in terms of their quality than trying to post every day on Instagram or something like that. Like for me, I want to build
Yeah.
relationships with people locally and get to know some people.
Can you talk a bit about that, the importance of that, of getting out there and just being part of a community?
Yeah, I know that it's kind of nerve-wracking for a lot of us to embrace that. And I can tell you from experience that I have not always been the best at getting out, talking to people, being in a group, inserting myself or any of that.
Sure.
It's only been with practice that I've gotten better. So to anyone watching this who that's very difficult for, just give yourself some grace. You don't have to solve it all now. It'll come if you just keep making little steps at a time. So for instance, going to a AIGA event like Phoenix Design Week and talking to a bunch of people now is much easier than it was 5 years ago. It's about just getting the practice in, and you're going to feel so much better about it. But it is the hardest thing to just do it.
That's good advice. Walter asks, how do you find your community, i.e. the consumers of your products?
So I think the first thing is being just sincerely yourself. I can tell you it is a challenge for me. I have struggled with comparing myself to others online a lot. Over the years, that's gotten better though. And I think when you're just sincerely who you are and you meet people where they're at. So for instance, taking my game prototype to Gamers Guild, and then someone walks by and I'm like, hey, would you like to try this game? I'm working on it right now. It's a prototype. Would you want to help me test it? You don't know how many people would just love to give their opinion about your game. So that's just one example, is just asking questions, you guys, is the number one thing that it's such a secret weapon in terms of doing better as a small business owner or as an entrepreneur. Asking questions, giving people an opportunity themselves to express their views in a very sincere way. And over time, you will become known for being a person who does that. It takes a little time, but it is so worth it to put in that effort of engaging other people, asking them what they think, what do they want, what would they like to see, and that really helps to build relationships with people.
So when you're sharing work and you're thinking about selling it, how do you think about, using commercial channels but protecting yourself?
So everything I put online has metadata attached to it. So at any point I could search the web for my own stuff and see who's using it. I'm not ashamed to say, because it's happened to many other of my friends and others, I have been ripped off before. Overseas, I sent them a note, please stop doing it. Couldn't do anything about it. Our job as creatives is to make the work. It's not to judge it. It's not to hold back. It's not to take our light that we have and then put that under a basket because we're afraid. Our job is to let whatever light we have shine out into the world, especially right now. I do not want to be ripped off or taken advantage of, but I'm doing my best to show that my style, my way of doing things is intrinsic to me, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm not going to hold back because it's important not to do that right now.
How do you feel about process and gaming, particularly like in that early work where you had those shapes that you kind of restricted yourself to, building, like describe loosely maybe your process and what's the important of that process?
Okay, so just really quickly and briefly, the overview would be first a lot of research, which is made easier for people when it comes to the web now with things like AI, where you can pull in information and data and find subsets and really see what's out there, at least on the web. It's great for aggregating that content and those things. So researching your ideas is something already out here that exists like this. The next thing is capturing all your ideas. I'm relentless about capturing ideas. I carry a little notebook with me everywhere I go to just try to, if I have an idea, capture it. And so capturing ideas is super important. The third thing is to make sure that as you're developing your ideas, you try to be minimal and set some boundaries for yourself. Like, I'm not going to go here because this is too much. I'm not going to go there. I just want to accomplish these 2 or 3 things with this project, because if you're anything like me, it can be very distracting and overwhelming to get started. So I find that putting those bumpers in place is comforting, at least to me, because I already struggle with being distracted. A fourth thing is to get feedback from people you trust about what you're doing. And often that's been my instructors. I still am in touch, you guys, with instructors from back when I was in college and friends that I made. Those are the people that will give you honest feedback. And asking for that feedback will help you make your process better. To sum it up, just don't devalue the process, because your output is only going to be as good as what your process is. And you'll hear that from time to time from people who will tell you they can cut corners. especially a lot of YouTube people. Like they'll tell you all the time, here's how you cut this corner, here's how you don't do this. Just be
Mm-hmm.
careful who you're watching, because not all of them have the experience that they might seem to have. And that's why it's important to have your own network of people you trust, and you know
Mm-hmm.
their pedigree, you know what they've done, and can give you really solid input on what you're doing. That'll help you to create a process you can repeat on multiple types of projects of your own. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell students to, it's important to share your work, get that feedback, but also just be aware of the context of who
Yeah.
is giving that feedback.
Um,
Kind of building off of that, a lot of students ask about the idea of style. Like, how do you feel like an illustrator comes up with the style? How do you feel like maybe what you would consider your style? How do you feel like you evolved into that?
I'm really glad you asked that, because I'm very passionate about this subject. Don't worry about style. Make your work happen. Make your ideas happen. And only after looking back at your work can you determine whether you have something repeating itself. And it
mhm.
does lead to idea of, oh, my style is this, or maybe it's that. Maybe all of my work I gravitate more to hand drawn, or maybe I've gravitated to more of shape-based work. For me, I have tried to build a flexible style, something that when I work with clients, I can shift into what they might want, whether it's like clean vectors or hand-drawn vectors, or, very technical drawings. I try to be flexible with that stuff. I ignore people who say you need one style to be known for. I have personally not found that to be helpful. I think that having a few different gears to shift into is really good. So if you look at your work and you're like, this looks different than that, I don't like that. Well, look at the positive side of that, which is you're developing range. And range is sometimes very important when it comes to the projects we work on. If you're too known for one thing, people will pin that to you, and then you'll
Mhm.
never be anything else but that. And that's why musicians change it up from album to album. They're looking to show the range of their creativity.
How much of a range or how focused do you think a portfolio should be for someone? And I realize that might change at different parts of their career.
Yeah, I'd say at the outset, do what's coming most comfortably in terms of expressing your ideas and making them happen. Obviously, when you're starting out and your goal is to finish and complete a degree, you have some objectives to meet, and so let yourself focus in on something and do it very well. But know that you can shift into, and your career is going to do this. Your career is this. It's not just the 5 years block you're in right now or something. There's a long
Mhm.
time for you to develop new ways of expressing yourself. So I'd say in the outset, yeah, maybe focusing in on one specific execution style would be good to master it a little bit more, because then you're able to show a commitment to something. So that is a good thing about working in a specific style. But maybe there'll be things about your work people can see similarities. To me, that's having a style. I also think too, Jordan, that style is about who you are as a person. So if who you are as a person comes through, and that doesn't change your how you treat people, the respect you show for other artists, etc., that ties into your style. It's who you'll be known as.
It's interesting to tie that idea of personality in with the style and it being a reflection. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Gents, this has been a tremendous conversation, and we have some student questions. Would you have enough
Yep.
time to answer some student questions? Student Angela, she asked the question, what are the essential tools that you use every day? For example, pen, tablet, drawing surface.
Okay, so I use a pen and ink, just carrying that around all the time. I always have something to write and draw with. And then aside from that, I use a digital drawing tablet. So I use an iPad right now. I've tried Surface, and then I'll use Adobe Fresco and Illustrator right now. But I am experimenting with other drawing apps like Procreate and Affinity. Looking forward to maybe Figma Draw too. I think might be something in the works. But yeah, that's the main stuff.
A question that relates to individuality and personality. Jarell asks, how has AI impacted the industry, for better or worse?
Yeah, the worst of it is that it's providing opportunity for people to make a lot of things that are heartless in terms of
Mhm.
artwork. The best of it is that it gives people like me who are making these products with a lot of writing, like games and stories and such, I can try to make my writing better because I can use it to proofread. I can use it to maybe potentially translate a game later on into Spanish and German like I want to do. So I'm
Yeah.
using it as a tool for those things, but I'll never use it for any generative purposes. I think that in the future, our individuality is what's going to, our value as individuals is going to increase because of all of the lookalike stuff that is just propagating the internet.
Question from Walter, who asks, this is a career question, what are studios looking for when hiring a new illustrator?
First thing is your personality and your willingness to collaborate selflessly with teams. That's number one. If it's not a conspiracy for other people out there who are tough to work with, not going to want to work with you. So he's asking a really studious question. I'm so glad because you already are caring about what studios want. That's a good thing.
Right.
The second thing is to demonstrate your work, show your process in what you bring in to show them. That'll mean a lot. There's a lot of people, again, trying to cut those corners to get a quick in. But if you have some work, you can show how you thought through things and really just share that quickly, even rapidly. If it's something that's a byline or something in your conversations, they'll at least see that there's depth to what you're showing. And so bring in your process, show your work.
A final forward-looking question from Bianca is, how do you see the industry changing for illustrators, and what trends are going to be most influential in the coming years?
I think it's kind of what we're seeing right now with generative stuff that all the software companies are flocking to is all the stuff above the waterline, that iceberg. We're seeing that what's floating. We're not seeing is all the stuff beneath the waterline. And beneath the waterline, there are still some of us working really hard to create individual works. And if there's any ways you can share your work practically with either friends, family, make things for yourself, demonstrate how you might use your iconography or illustrations in different projects, such as maybe you're not a writer, maybe you don't have a story yet, but how would you show a few pages of a book for a children's book? Look for opportunities either online or in person to share that work. If it's prints at a small art fair, if it's larger projects that you want to develop, do that. But I think no matter what, just keep going, keep making your ideas happen, because no one believes we can do something until we show them we've done it. So I can talk all day about my work, but unless I have things to show, no one's going to believe me. Maybe it's illustration, but you could use that for music purposes, just creating art to accompany some music. It's a big question to try to answer quickly, but I appreciate it. It's such a good question.
Thank you so much for taking all this time to share your experiences up and down your career.
Thanks so much. You guys have been great. And thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Good night.